So we are officially in the new year, and what do I spend my first video of 2018 doing? Still talking about the movies of 2017. Everyone has already done their best of, worst of. I'm a little far behind on it, but before I get into those lists, this is something I do every year. I make a video where I talk about all the movies from last year that I have seen, but didn't give full-fledged reviews for, and there's quite a few that I saw. I should probably say that this is going to be the last time I'll ever do these videos, because thanks to the app Stardust, Stardust allows people to give quick 30-second reactions to movies, TV shows, trailers, so I'll be using Stardust from now on to talk about movies that I've seen but haven't reviewed, so you can definitely follow me on the app, and please join Stardust as well. They are not paying me at all to say this is not a sponsorship, I'm just a really big fan of the app, so if you love talking about movies, definitely join Stardust. And hey, we can become friends on Stardust, so definitely check it out. But let's move on to the movies that I have seen of last year that I didn't get a chance to review. I'm going to be going in order of their release date as best I can. So first off, we have Monster Trucks. Yes, I saw this movie. Basically, it's 2017's 9 Lives. It's directed by the director of Ice Age, Robots, Epic, basically the guy who co-founded Blue Sky Studios and does the voice for Scrat, that squirrel that keeps hauling around that acorn and has no reason to be in the Ice Age movies. But anyway, Monster Trucks follows this high school kid named Trip, who's played by Lucas Till, and he's really good at mechanics, he's good at fixing trucks. He comes across this alien monster, or I say alien, but the monsters live within the Earth's core, so I don't know. They're not aliens. But anyway, he finds this creature, becomes friends with it, and he has to protect them from the evil government. So pretty much it's another discount E.T. knockoff. And one of the biggest faults of this movie is that it comes out 2 decades after the E.T. ripoff thing has died and faded away. And that's being generous. It's more like 3 decades. When I saw the trailers for this movie, I thought it just looked absolutely insane. Like, who the fuck came up with this idea? I'll get into that more a little later. But I figured it could be one of those so bad it's good movies. And it's just overall kind of bland. It's pretty much a safe movie. It feels very much like a E.T. ripoff where you can easily tell where things are going to go. They don't really go all the way with a concept as stupid as Monster Trucks. But the one thing that had me laughing hard was the worst use of the Wilhelm scream I've ever heard. Now, when you have the Wilhelm scream, usually it's used when people go flying off due to an explosion or they get shot. You see this a lot in the Star Wars movies. Either it's a stormtrooper because they're wearing helmets, or it happens so quickly that you don't see their mouth move. Here, it's just a guy looking at the camera as he's driving and he goes, and when I saw that, I was like, wait, hold up, go back. I couldn't believe it for a second. And that's probably the most unintentional laugh that I got. The rest of the movie is really dull, but what makes this truly stand out is the fact that this movie was the idea of the 4-year-old son, I believe, of the president of Paramount. This movie cost over $120 million. The movie lost $115 million before it even got released because it was supposed to come out in the summer of 2015. And this movie cost the president of Paramount his job. So that is just one of these stories about a movie that just makes it super special. Like, the movie itself is just bland, don't waste your money on it, but the behind the scenes of it and how this thing exists is beyond fascinating. So that's my overall rating. Don't waste your money. The next movie on this list is Gifted, which is directed by Mark Webb and is his first feature film after the disaster that was The Amazing Spider-Man. Anyway, this movie stars Chris Evans, who plays the uncle of a young girl whose mother passed away, but the little girl is super smart. She's highly intelligent, and they live in some shitty-ass, like, swamp trailer park area in Florida, and the reason is because his mother wants to push the girl to become one of the smartest women in the world, just like Chris Evans' sister. And there's a reason that I won't spoil as to why Chris Evans is against this completely. This is one of those small indie dramas that you know it has a really good heart, and most of the movie is very, very good. It's heartfelt, it's sincere. Chris Evans does a phenomenal job with this role, but it doesn't truly stand out. It's not that special of a movie, and to be honest, it didn't really leave that much of an impact on me when I saw it. I liked it when I watched it, and it definitely has its dramatic moments, but it's nothing too memorable. It's good, but it's not great. And that's all I have to say about it. The next movie is Okja, which is from the director of The Host, not the Stephenie Meyer's adaptation, but the South Korean monster movie, and Snowpiercer. This movie follows a young Korean girl whose family raises this mutant super pig, and suddenly this evil corporation that gave them the pig deems it as the winner of this competition that lasted for 10 years. So they take the pig and supposedly want to slaughter it, make it a superstar and whatnot. But the little girl is suddenly approached by this group that wants to save the piglet and stop the evil corporation from abusing animals. And it's a really unique movie in some ways. The design of the pig is super creative. The pig's name is Okja, which is the title of the film. The little Korean girl is so good in this role. And she doesn't have to speak a lick of English at all. You can just tell that, yeah, this girl's talented. And it does have some really good performances by Tilda Swinton, who I get the feeling that this director treats Tilda Swinton the way that Tim Burton treated Helena Bonham Carter, where Tilda Swinton is just pretty much this guy's Barbie doll. Because in this movie, she plays two different characters, and then in Snowpiercer she's practically unrecognizable. So it does have a lot of good ideas in it and some great performances, but when we get to the anti-slaughter group, the group that tries to save Okja, that's when the movie becomes incredibly preachy with its anti-slaughter message that slaughtering animals is terrible. And I'm all against slaughterhouses as well, but the way this movie comes across is so preachy, and it's just so in your face. If you thought Grand Theft Auto 5 was not subtle at all with its social commentary, this movie will bang you over the head repeatedly until you start bleeding, because it's like, okay, I get it. Slaughterhouses are bad, evil corporations are bad, just leave me alone for Christ's sake. If it was done in a more subtle way, I wouldn't be complaining about it, but unfortunately, this movie doesn't really understand the meaning of the word subtle, so yeah, it's good. It's a really good movie, but it's not one of the director's best. I still think Snowpiercer is a better movie. However, I can tell you that Okja is a much better movie than The Book of Henry, which is a movie that I've been told throughout the year was going to be one of the worst movies of the year. I'm surprised that movie hasn't really come up when it comes to worst of movies. This is directed by Colin Trevorrow, who did Safety Not Guaranteed and Jurassic World, and was at one point supposed to do Star Wars Episode 9, but I think this movie was the reason he left or got fired. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, this movie follows a 11-year-old named Henry who, like the girl in Gifted, is super intelligent and is really above all the other students in his class. However, one night he discovers that his next door neighbor, who I believe is like a couple years older than him, is being abused by her father. In a child abuse way or a sexual way, it's not really determined. I feel like it's a sexual way, because later on Henry develops a tumor in his head out of nowhere, dies, but he leaves behind a book with instructions for his mother and an audio file for his mother to listen to on having to take all these plans to kill the next door neighbor who is abusing his daughter. And you're like, what the fuck? The reason I have that reaction is because this movie starts out really sincere. It's just sort of a small movie that feels like an indie drama, and you're like, okay, this is enjoyable. The actors are pretty good, despite all the shit Colin Trevorrow gets. He's good with actors. And then at a certain point, you're just like, what the fuck just happened? And what sucks is that the first half is actually good. The first half of the movie is good. There's some great dramatic moments here and there. The kid who plays Henry is pretty good at points. And then his little brother is played by Jacob Tremblay, who we all know as the little boy from Room. And he's really good here. There are some scenes with the two of them that really work for me on an emotional level, just because of that brother-brother relationship. But then after Henry dies, the movie takes a complete 180, delivers this twist, and it just loses everything. It just takes you out of the movie completely. The first half is pretty good, but the second half is something that I say don't waste your money on it. It's something that you really have to see in order to understand what I'm talking about. But I actually don't think this movie is as bad as many people were making out to be at the time. I feel like 2017 has had far worse than The Book of Henry. But it is worth mentioning as one of the worst of the year just because of that inorganic, complete 180 of a second half. Now let's move on to one of my favorite movies of the year, The Big Sick. This was, out of all the movies that I'm going to be talking about in this video, outside of the ones that would make for entertaining reviews. The Big Sick is the one that I regret not giving an individual review for, because this is a brilliant movie. It's a really sweet romantic dramedy that stars Kumail Nanjiani. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but basically, he's from Silicon Valley, and he also co-wrote this movie with his wife. And it's pretty much a slight fictional story of how he met his wife and the horrible medical condition that she went through that left her in a hospital for a long period of time. What works about this movie is that it feels relatable. Outside the fact that it's slightly based on how these two met, the relationship is very real, the characters feel very real, and it's got a lot of really great funny moments, but it also has a large heart, and its dramatic elements are incredibly effective. The reason I never gave an individual review for this movie is because I saw this about 3 weeks after it came out, and I did a Stardust reaction of it, which thank God that app exists, because I just adore this movie. This is going to be in my top 20 lists, so I can elaborate a lot more on why I love that movie in that video. So for right now, just get off your ass and go see it right now if you haven't. And apparently, according to Kumail Nanjiani, it's available on Pornhub. I don't endorse Pornhub at all. I don't encourage my audience to go to Pornhub, but I just want to check it out to see if it's actually there or if it got deleted. Yeah, moving on. This is getting awkward. And from that, we're moving on to the Meyerowitz stories, parentheses, new and selected. This movie stars Ben Stiller, Adam Sandler, and Dustin Hoffman, and pretty much focuses on two brothers, Ben Stiller and Adam Sandler. One of them is very successful and lives out in LA. The other is just a sad loser. I'll let you decide which is which if you haven't seen the movie. And these two basically attend an event in New York that's supposed to honor the artistic legacy of their father, who's played by Dustin Hoffman. But they're a complete dysfunctional family, and there's a lot of family arguments. It's one of these family dramas that just makes me feel uncomfortable watching, because sometimes they very much reflect on situations that I've been in when I'm around my extended family, though my entire family is nowhere near as dysfunctional as their family is, although no, we're not dysfunctional at all. At least I don't think so. I wasn't in love with this movie at first. There were just parts with the arguments that I found obnoxious. And again, it might be a personal thing that I just can't stand these kind of really realistic family arguments, because at times I live them. And I think another part of this, which this is probably not fair, is that Dustin Hoffman has been accused of sexual harassment. So there's just part of me when watching him in this movie where I'm just like, ooh. However, at a certain point, the movie starts to turn me around for a little bit when Dustin Hoffman's character is sent to the hospital, and that, in a sense, brings the family together, and they're stuck together to see if he's going to survive or not, and things start to get a little better. Overall, it's a good movie, but it's not great. And again, it might be a personal issue, and I'll admit that it's not fair to criticize a movie based on personal things, but this one just didn't do it for me. The next movie is Battle of the Sexes, which I actually just watched last night before recording this review. And this movie stars Emma Stone as Billie Jean King and Steve Carell as Bobby Riggs, two tennis players. And this movie kind of focuses on their careers and everything that's leading up to their big match in 1973. And it's a good movie. Steve Carell and Emma Stone are fantastic here, especially Emma Stone, who at points is very unrecognizable. But it's overall a sports movie, and I'm not saying sports movies aren't my thing. Usually with sports movies, even though this is loosely based on real events, it goes down a level of predictability. Even with fictional sports movies, like Rocky, as much as I love them, they go down this road of predictability where there's no real surprises for me, and nothing truly stands out. It's a really good movie, but again, I don't think it's great, and that's just my attitude towards most sports movies. Next up is a movie that I feel like is going to be one of the biggest Oscar contenders of the year, which is 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. This movie focuses on a woman played by Frances McDermott, whose daughter was raped and murdered, but the police did nothing with it. So there are 3 billboards that go along this road that are pretty much unoccupied. She buys the billboards for a month, posts up messages that pretty much accuse the police of not doing their job, and things go down a really dark path. It's a really fantastic movie. Performances in here are absolutely stellar. It's a tough movie to watch, honestly, just because of how dark it can get. And a lot of people claim that there are funny moments in them. I didn't see anything here at all. This was just like serious from beginning to end. Frances McDormand is incredible in this movie. She should definitely get an Oscar nomination. Sam Rockwell is fantastic as well. He's probably my pick for Best Supporting Actor because he's just one of these characters that you hate so much, but he's so effective. Although, throughout most of the movie, it didn't look like he was that bright of a guy. He looked like a cop with an IQ of 40. But again, he's just so good in the role. Sam Rockwell already is one of my favorite actors, so I hope he gets a lot of recognition. It's really, really well done. It's not going to be in my top 20 because it's just something that's pretty difficult to watch, but it's definitely a movie that's worth seeing in a lifetime. Especially since we're getting close to the Oscar nominations, this is going to get a lot of attention. The next movie I saw was Daddy's Home 2. For what reason, I'm not 100% sure. I have MoviePass. My dad has MoviePass. He was bored one night, suggested we go out, see a movie, and he, for some reason, suggested Daddy's Home 2. I have no idea why, but at least I have another movie to fill in the slot for my 10 worst of. I never saw the first Daddy's Home. That's because it came out the same month as Star Wars The Force Awakens, and I was too busy watching that movie 6 times in theaters. So, I never knew the plot to that one. For this one, it focuses on Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg's characters who want to just spend one entire Christmas together, and suddenly, out of nowhere, the two dads arrive. Mark Wahlberg's dad is played by Mel Gibson, and Will Ferrell's dad is played by John Lithgow. There's nothing funny about this movie at all. I'm cutting to the chase here. This is bullshit. But then again, I was expecting it to be bullshit, so I'll say right now it's a movie to not waste your money on because it never made me angry. It's just so predictable. What really irritated me throughout the whole movie is that this was a movie that made me side with Mel Gibson. I don't like Mel Gibson because of all the shit that he said many years ago, 8 years ago now. But there were just so many moments with Will Ferrell and John Lithgow that irritated me so much that I just kind of sided with Mel Gibson. Like, you know what? Let's go get a beer, Mel. Let's leave these two to be idiots. Sometimes you have these movies that are so bad that you want to see where they're going, like with The Snowman. But Daddy's Home 2 is one of those movies that's so bad, you know where it's going to go, and you're just like, oh, this is going to happen. Yep, I'm right. Oh, look, this is going to happen. Yep, I'm right again. So it's terrible, but it's a bland kind of terrible. Again, don't waste your money on it. And now we come to the last movie on this list, which is The Post. I might do a full review for this later on because it still has yet to get a wide release throughout the country. But basically, this is the latest Steven Spielberg movie and stars Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks as two people who work at the Washington Post, with Meryl Streep being the owner, and they have to deal with the troubles of Richard Nixon, barring the press from releasing stories about the fact that the last few presidential administrations have really wanted to go to Vietnam, despite publicly stating that they will never go to Vietnam. So the reason I like this movie is because it's very relevant to what's going on now with President Trump. Hate that man so much. But it's relevant with his situation versus the media. And it's a movie that I feel like should be inspiring for all the news organizations that are being threatened by Trump. It's like, look, we've had this happen before, we can fight them again. And the performances are great by Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, who, Meryl Streep at this point is just somebody who is going to get an Oscar nomination without even trying. And here she's good because she's Meryl Streep, but she doesn't really stand out that much. It's just Meryl Streep in another great role. And plus, there's the little fact that Sally Hawkins is in The Shape of Water, and that's gonna get her an Oscar win. So sorry, Meryl, you lose again. The one thing I don't like about this movie, though, is that it has several moments of Spielberg schlockiness that I can't stand. I feel like after Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, Spielberg just kind of changed as a director. I mean, I admire him for doing a lot more mature movies the older he's gotten as a director, like Saving Private Ryan, Munich, Lincoln, Bridge of Spies. However, he tries to incorporate all of these, like, really schlocky Oscar baity moments in his movies. He doesn't really seem to do this with his more recent blockbusters, or even all of his blockbusters, but for some reason with his award movies, he has to go this extra mile to really make it feel award baitish. I mean, that's not a word at all, but you kind of get the point. A lot of people have had these same problems with Spielberg in his later Oscar-type movies. So I think everyone kind of gets an idea of what I'm talking about. But on the whole, because it's so relevant to what's going on today, it's worth seeing in your lifetime. Again, I might do an individual review on this when it gets its wide release. But I had to talk about the movie in this video because this is going to be number 20 in my top 20 best movies list. And those are all the movies from 2017 that I have seen but couldn't give full reviews for. The next video I'm going to be doing is my 10 worst of. If you've followed my channel for a while, you know I do my worst of first and then my best of last. So definitely keep your eyes open for that. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below and tell me what you thought of all of these movies, if and when you've seen them. Which one of these was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.